As the dawn of 1940 cast long, ominous shadows across the Polish countryside, a dreadful construction was being erected amidst the peaceful landscape, one that would soon become an emblem of humanity's darkest hour. Auschwitz. Built under the merciless command of the Third Reich, this concentration camp emerged as a chilling testament to the unthinkable horrors born of prejudice, hatred, and utter disregard for human life. Under the grim guise of racial purification, thousands of innocent lives were stripped of their dignity, subjected to brutalities that defied comprehension. At the epicenter of this was Josef Mengele, infamously known as the Angel of Death. As a physician at Auschwitz, Mengele carried out unspeakable experiments on the helpless prisoners, often without the use of anesthesia, under the twisted banner of scientific research. But have you ever pondered over the chilling details of these experiments? How is it possible for such horrific acts to be conducted in broad daylight under the watchful eyes of the world? Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor and laureate of the Nobel Peace Prize, once remarked, "To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time." As we traverse the sorrowful chapters of Auschwitz, we owe it to the memory of those lost to confront the unsettling reality of the Holocaust. Join us as we delve into the sinister labyrinth of Auschwitz, unveiling the horrifying experiments conducted within its cold, unfeeling walls. Welcome to the diary of Julius Caesar. Auschwitz emerges, the shadow over Poland. As the year 1940 dawned, the whispers of a new and ominous structure began to spread across the Polish lands. Auschwitz, originally known as Konzentrationslager Auschwitz, was conceived in the minds of Heinrich Himmler and Rudolf Höss, two men whose names would forever be etched in the annals of humanity's darkest period. The chosen site for this facility, situated near the town of Auschwitz in southern Poland, was a paradox of pastoral beauty and impending doom. Its strategic location at the crossroads of major railway lines made it an ideal place for the mass movement of people, a cruelly practical consideration for the Nazi regime's deadly intentions. Rudolf Höss, a man with a stern demeanor and a chilling loyalty to the Nazi cause, became the first commandant of Auschwitz. Selected by Heinrich Himmler himself, Höss was instructed to create a concentration camp that would set a precedent for all others. As the bricks were laid and the fences erected, few could have envisioned the monstrosity that Auschwitz would become. What had once been a Polish army barracks was transformed into a place of despair under the hands of prisoners transferred from Sachsenhausen, a concentration camp in Germany. As Auschwitz's first inmates, these individuals were coerced into constructing the very walls that would confine them. A fascinating yet tragic anecdote tells of a prisoner who, with the clandestine use of a smuggled camera, managed to capture images of the camp's early days. These photographs, concealed for years, now serve as an important testament to Auschwitz's grim genesis. In the early stages, Auschwitz was intended primarily for Polish political prisoners. The first transport, consisting of 728 men, arrived on June 14, 1940. It was not long, however, before the camp's purpose began to mutate under the sinister objectives of the Third Reich. Himmler, in a chilling quote, once described concentration camps as the epitome of the Nazi state, alluding to their use as tools for racial purification and political suppression. From its inception, Auschwitz was marked by a strict regime of labor and discipline designed to strip inmates of their humanity. An iron gate greeted prisoners with the cynical phrase, "Arbeit macht frei," work sets you free. This phrase embodied the deceitful promise of survival through labor, yet for many, the reality was much more dire. The early days of Auschwitz also bore witness to the chilling innovation of a man named Karl Bischoff, a senior SS construction supervisor. He was instrumental in designing the vast expanses of the camp, pioneering an assembly line style of architecture designed for mass incarceration. This model would later be replicated in Auschwitz II, Birkenau, symbolizing the escalation of the Nazis' final solution. Despite the unspoken horrors of its conception and construction, glimmers of human spirit persevered. Prisoners smuggled letters to their loved ones, etched their names into walls, and whispered stories of hope. Among the first prisoners was Tadeusz Wierzchowski, who became the first person to escape from Auschwitz in July 1940. His audacious act of defiance offered a glimmer of hope amidst the despair of the camp's foundation. Auschwitz morphs, the dreadful metamorphosis. As the winds of 1941 blew over the haunting landscape of Auschwitz, an ominous shift was underway. The brainchild of the notorious SS and the Reich Main Security Office, Auschwitz was to undergo a deadly metamorphosis. It was transitioning from being a place of punishment and confinement for political dissidents to becoming the epicenter of the Nazis' systematic campaign of annihilation, a chapter that still sends chills down humanity's spine. In the quiet town of Brzezinka, a few miles away from Auschwitz, a companion to the monstrous facility was taking shape. Dubbed Auschwitz II Birkeanu, this annex was not just another concentration camp, it was to be the primary site of the Holocaust's horrifying mass murders. The man behind this gruesome addition was none other than Heinrich Himmler, who ordered its construction during his visit in 1941. Under the supervision of the remorseless SS architect Karl Bischoff, Birkenau was designed with an abhorrent efficiency in mind. It consisted of sectors, each having its own crematoria and gas chambers, capable of annihilating thousands of lives in a day. It was Bischoff's blueprint that personified the industrialization of death, a concept as chilling as it was real. But it wasn't just the landscape that was changing, the inmate populace was evolving too. The arrival of the first Jewish deportees in March 1942 marked a sinister pivot in Auschwitz's function. No longer merely a prison for Polish dissenters, it was now a terminal for those deemed undesirable by the Nazis, primarily Jews from all across Europe. The camp's population swelled dramatically, and by the year's end it was home to approximately 30,000 tormented souls. Stories of resilience amidst this transformation were heartbreakingly scarce, but indomitable. Witold Pilecki, a Polish soldier and resistance member, volunteered to be imprisoned in Auschwitz to gather intelligence. His reports first alerted the Allies about the horrors unfolding within the camp's electrified fences. While the world outside largely remained oblivious, Pilecki and his covert Union of Military Organizations were among the early symbols of resistance. As the camp evolved, so did the cruel rituals. The notorious selection process began, where SS physicians like the infamous Josef Mengele decided who would work and who would be sent to the gas chambers immediately upon arrival. Mengele's fascination with twins led him to conduct ghastly experiments, a chilling illustration of the descent into madness and cruelty. Despite the camp's evolving design for extermination, life persisted, albeit in its most diminished form. People fell in love, shared memories, and even managed to celebrate their culture covertly. A small group of women, for instance, managed to orchestrate a secret Hanukkah celebration in 1942, huddling together to whisper prayers and share meager rations. Their courage, a testament to the enduring human spirit, was a beacon of hope amidst a landscape of despair. Surviving shadows, an ordinary day in extraordinary circumstances. Within the barbed wires of Auschwitz, the pulsating rhythm of life, as they knew it, had been radically distorted for the inmates. As dawn broke over the camp, a harsh cacophony of bells signaled the start of another day, shattering the short-lived tranquility of the night. Sleep-deprived and disoriented, inmates were promptly summoned for roll call. Forced to stand in rows for hours, they braved the elements, the cruelty of the guards, and their own debilitating fatigue. Amidst this grueling ritual, a glimmer of humanity occasionally shone through. Józef Paczynski, a Polish political prisoner and the personal barber of Auschwitz commandant Rudolf Hoss, recalled the acts of defiance shown by prisoners during these roll calls. Though risking severe punishment, some would seek to comfort the weakest amongst them, lending them the strength to stand upright and evade selection for extermination. Paczynski's tale bears testament to the courage and resilience of the human spirit, even in the direst circumstances. Each day in Auschwitz was punctuated by grueling labor. Prisoners were forced into a multitude of tasks, ranging from constructing new camp buildings, sorting through the belongings of those who had perished, to working in nearby factories. These work details were perilous, exposing inmates to hazardous conditions, beatings, and often leading to fatal accidents. However, they also provided a grim means of survival, as those deemed fit to work were spared from immediate extermination. Sustenance in Auschwitz was a cruel mockery of nutrition. Meager portions of food were doled out, often comprising a piece of bread, a small wedge of cheese, or a thin soup made from rotting vegetables, and, occasionally, a small amount of meat. Primo Levi, a survivor and a poignant chronicler of the Holocaust, reflected on the role of food in his memoir, "If this is a man, our hunger is unbearable and is always with us. It is a hunger that is not sated, it kills but slowly and can last months and years." Despite the grim circumstances, inmates often managed to find strength in camaraderie. Shared songs, whispered stories, and hushed discussions became their resistance, their means to hold on to their identities. In his memoir, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Auschwitz survivor, recounted, "We created a sort of cabaret in our hut. A few talented prisoners had made instruments out of scraps, and they played while the others sang or recited. Sleeping conditions in the camp were unimaginably harsh. Inhabitants were crammed into barracks, often sleeping multiple people to a wooden bunk with no bedding or warmth. Yet within this cramped existence, connections were formed. As per the accounts of Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, nightfall in the camp became a time for quiet reflection and shared stories, where the inmates would whisper their fears, hopes, and memories. Holding on to life, the art of endurance in Auschwitz. The will to survive can inspire astonishing acts of courage and resilience, as exemplified by the inmates of Auschwitz. Treading a treacherous path between despair and hope, prisoners developed myriad strategies to endure the unthinkable, crafting a grim but ingenious culture of survival that helped them navigate their bleak surroundings. Food, or the lack thereof, was a constant concern for prisoners. The daily ration barely provided enough sustenance to survive, let alone perform the harsh physical labor demanded of them. Consequently, an underground barter system emerged within Auschwitz, where items like a piece of bread, a spoonful of margarine, or a sip of soup became precious currency. Auschwitz survivor and author Primo Levi recounted, "Bread was the gold of the lager, camp. He who was in possession of bread was in possession of almost everything. Yet physical sustenance was only part of the survival equation. Psychological endurance was equally important." Viktor Frankl, a noted psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, used his professional insights to support his fellow prisoners. He promoted the belief that life had meaning, even amidst the horror. His later writings, most notably in Man's Search for Meaning, reflected on the vital role of hope and personal purpose in surviving Auschwitz, stating, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." The importance of solidarity and collective support cannot be overstated. Groups formed based on common languages, backgrounds, or skills, offering their members mutual support. This is exemplified in the story of the Women's Orchestra of Auschwitz, led by the prisoner Alma Rose. This unlikely group found strength and some form of protection through their shared musical abilities, performing for the camp authorities and prisoners alike. Maintaining one's dignity and humanity was another key survival strategy. Edith Eger, a Holocaust survivor, later became a noted psychologist, using her experiences in Auschwitz to help others. She recounted moments when she and other women danced in secret, using movement as a form of silent resistance, an affirmation of their humanity in a place designed to strip it away. Inmates also found strength in the power of creativity. Drawings and poems, crafted surreptitiously, served as outlets for expressing their emotions and experiences. The works of Charlotte Delbo, a French resistance fighter who survived Auschwitz, and her poignant verses that encapsulated the life in the camp have become treasured records of those dark times. Religion, too, provided a beacon of hope for many. Despite the dire circumstances, religious observances occurred covertly, offering solace and a semblance of normality. One of the most striking examples is the account of Rabbi T.V. Hirsch Meisels, who, risking his life, managed to organize a Passover Seder in 1944. Despite the dangers, the gathering offered much-needed spiritual sustenance. Avoidance of disease and maintaining hygiene, despite the squalid conditions, was another essential survival strategy. Former prisoner and physician Lucy Adelsberger described the struggle to prevent the spread of diseases and maintain some level of hygiene within the camp, a task made even more challenging by the scarcity of medical supplies. These coping strategies were manifestations of an indomitable will to endure, to hold on to life despite its horrors. Each day in Auschwitz, prisoners navigated a fine line between life and death. Their survival mechanisms, ingenious bartering systems, clandestine cultural and religious expressions, illuminate the remarkable resilience of the human spirit under the darkest of shadows. Auschwitz's Chamber of Shadows, the twisted science of Josef Mengele. In the grim theater of Auschwitz, where human dignity was systematically stripped away, the medical experiments conducted by Nazi physicians represent one of the most chilling chapters. Among them, one figure looms large, Dr. Josef Mengele, a man whose name has become synonymous with the horrifying abuse of medical ethics and human rights. Arriving in Auschwitz in May 1943, Mengele took up his horrific duties with an unnerving zeal. As the camp physician, his responsibilities included the dreaded selections, where he decided who was fit for labor and who would be immediately sent to the gas chambers. His arbitrary and often whimsical decisions caused many to dread his notorious finger wave, which decided their fate. But it was Mengele's medical research that earned him the moniker Angel of Death. In the ghastly confines of his makeshift laboratories, Mengele conducted a range of inhumane experiments, the details of which continue to shock and disturb. He showed a particular interest in twins, who he believed could unlock the secrets of genetics. Twins Eva and Miriam Moses were among Mengele's victims. Barely 10 years old when they arrived at Auschwitz in 1944, they were subjected to a series of painful and dangerous procedures. Eva recalled the chilling moment when Mengele declared, "I have a special experiment. I'm going to take out this one's brain," pointing at her sister. It was a moment that haunted both girls for the rest of their lives. Mengele was also fascinated by heterochromia, a condition that results in two different colored eyes. He collected hundreds of eyes from murdered prisoners, adorning his office with this macabre display. Yet, Mengele's reign of terror wasn't confined to Auschwitz alone. He regularly sent samples, often organs and body parts, to his mentor, Professor Ottmar Freiherr von Verschuer in Germany, who shared Mengele's passion for twin research. Verschuer, who managed to evade prosecution after the war, undoubtedly knew the grim origins of these specimens, yet he continued to publish and benefit from Mengele's inhumane research. Mengele also sought to manipulate the female reproductive system. He performed horrifying experiments on pregnant women and attempted to artificially inseminate prisoners. One survivor, Vera Alexander, recalled a group of Romani girls who mysteriously started to show signs of pregnancy after being injected with an unknown substance by Mengele. Despite the horror of their experiences, many of Mengele's victims lived to tell their tales. Their testimonies offer valuable insights into the nature and scale of Mengele's inhumane experiments. Moreover, they serve as a powerful reminder of the potential for science to be twisted in the service of evil when unchecked by ethical guidelines and regulations. As the war drew to a close, Mengele fled Auschwitz. Despite being one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals, he managed to evade capture, ultimately escaping to South America. His subsequent life and eventual death in 1979 in Brazil remain shrouded in mystery and controversy. In the shadow of Auschwitz, the dark economy of forced labor. In the dire setting of Auschwitz, one of the darkest facets was the exploitation of human labor, an insidious manifestation of the Nazi plan to annihilate the Jewish people and other marginalized groups. The profit-driven industries that sprang up around Auschwitz and its subcamps epitomized a nefarious nexus of capitalism and genocide. From its inception, Auschwitz was more than a concentration and extermination camp. It was an industrial hub where prisoners were forced to labor under brutal conditions, enriching the Third Reich and its corporate collaborators. The most prominent among these was IG Farben, a colossal German conglomerate that constructed a synthetic rubber and fuel plant known as Bühnewerke near Auschwitz III, Monowitz. The construction of the Bühnewerke plant began in 1942. For this colossal project, tens of thousands of Auschwitz prisoners were deployed. The plant never produced the intended Bühne rubber in significant quantities, yet it consumed the lives of countless prisoners who labored in inhumane conditions, were subjected to lethal exposure to hazardous substances, and perished from exhaustion, malnutrition, and mistreatment. Primo Levi, an Italian Jewish chemist and Auschwitz survivor, later wrote extensively about his experiences at Monowitz in his book If This Is a Man. Levi, who was forced to work in the Bühnewerke laboratory, painted a grim picture of the conditions, saying, "The life of the non-privileged prisoner who does not work in the commandos and who is without any special function is extraordinarily hard." While IG Farben is the most notorious, numerous other businesses exploited Auschwitz's captive labor force. These included the electrical conglomerate Siemens and Krupp, a steel and armaments giant. Their projects ranged from manufacturing munitions to constructing additional facilities, such as the satellite camps around Auschwitz, known collectively as the Eintracht-Hütte camps. Survivor Elie Wiesel's memoir Night vividly describes the brutal labor conditions and his experiences working at a forced labor unit at Auschwitz, moving heavy stones for hours on end. His chilling account highlighted not just the physical, but also the psychological toll of such forced labor, including the slow erosion of hope and humanity. In this grim landscape, survival often hinged on securing a good job, a term prisoners used for work that offered a slightly better chance of survival. Skilled laborers, especially those in trades like carpentry or tailoring, were sometimes assigned less grueling jobs and had a slightly better chance of survival. The cruelty and exploitation were not just confined to Auschwitz. Across the occupied territories, labor camps were established, feeding into a vast and sinister network of industries. Thousands of prisoners were transported to these camps, away from the extermination sites, but still within the shadow of death. Post-war, some companies have admitted to their use of forced labor and have established compensation funds for survivors. However, these acknowledgements often came decades later, and many argue they fell far short of a full reckoning with their past. Dread of despair, starvation and survival in Auschwitz. In the relentless pursuit of their systematic destruction of marginalized communities, the Nazis employed one of humanity's most primeval weapons, hunger. At Auschwitz, one of the most infamous Nazi concentration and extermination camps, food, or rather the scarcity of it, played a crucial role in the dystopian reality of those confined within its deadly perimeters. From the onset, a day at Auschwitz started with a roll call before dawn. Following this grim assembly, prisoners were given what was euphemistically referred to as breakfast, a concoction of dark liquid resembling coffee or herbal tea. But in reality, it was a brew devoid of nutrition or taste. The midday meal was the main, and sometimes the only solid nourishment, which was little more than a thin soup, mostly water flavored with remnants of rotten vegetables, spoiled fish, or meat. The evening meal, like the morning, was another serving of the ominous liquid, sometimes accompanied by a piece of bread made from a mixture of flour and sawdust. The daily ration barely contained 1,300 calories, far below the minimum 2,400 calories required to sustain a person subjected to heavy labor. Dutch historian and Auschwitz survivor Robert Jan van Pelt recounted this dreadful dietary regime in his work, stating, "Auschwitz was a universe where everyone was hungry, all the time." This enforced hunger served a dual purpose for the Nazis. It kept the prisoners weakened and less likely to rebel, and it accelerated their death through malnutrition, aligning with the horrendous goal of extermination. Food scarcity became an instrument of power within the camp's hierarchy. SS guards, camp leaders, kapos, and other privileged prisoners often took more than their share, leaving the ordinary prisoners with even less. This deprivation created a grim economy within the camp, with food, or even the promise of it, being used as a currency for favors, work, and, at times, life itself. One of the tragic ironies of Auschwitz was its location in a region abundant with food production. The camp was situated in southern Poland, an area known for its fertile lands and rich agricultural yield. Yet the prisoners were fed with substandard rations, while the surplus was used to feed the German war machine and the home front. Anecdotes of the so-called Auschwitz diet abound in the memories of survivors. For instance, Primo Levi, an Italian Jewish survivor, described the obsession with food in the camp. Our life in camp was dominated, from waking to sleeping, by the all-encompassing physiological torment of hunger. Food was so crucial to survival that Levi even referred to bread as currency in the hand, future nourishment, and above all, life tomorrow. Then there's the chilling recollection of Polish political prisoner Tadeusz Borowski, who wrote in his story A Day at Harmentz about the macabre joy of prisoners assigned to work at the fields outside the camp. They were able to find potatoes frozen in the ground, a valuable supplement to their meager diet. Auschwitz's iron fist, living in the shadow of punishment. In Auschwitz's grim tableau, the ever-looming spectre of punishment hung ominously over the camp, a constant reminder of the brutal regime prisoners were under. The Nazis had a wide array of cruel methods of correction for both imagined and real infractions, fueling the cycle of fear and dehumanization that defined camp life. The whip was the guard's constant companion, a brutal symbol of authority that could be employed at any time, for any reason, or no reason at all. Each lash, each bruise, was a macabre tally of the relentless cruelty inflicted upon those whose only crime was their existence. However, physical abuse was only one layer of the multifaceted punishment system. A common form of psychological torment was public executions, designed to instill fear among the prisoners. These often involved hanging, the most public form of execution in Auschwitz. The gallows in the camp's main square served as a morbid stage where prisoners were forced to watch as their fellow inmates were put to death. SS officer Rudolf Hoss, the longest-serving commandant of Auschwitz, viewed these events as a necessary part of camp discipline. In Auschwitz, where life was reduced to base survival, the punishment extended to stealing food, smuggling letters, or any form of resistance. A peculiar yet brutal form of punishment was the standing cell, a cramped, dark space where up to 4 prisoners were confined without room to sit or lie down. Here, they would spend their nights after a long day of forced labor. An experienced survivor, Kazimierz Pieczowski, described as a nightmare that still haunts me. A curious yet horrific detail about Auschwitz's punishment system was the Block 11, known as the Death Block. It was a place where numerous executions took place and where prisoners were subjected to torturous interrogations. The basement of Block 11 housed the infamous starvation cells, where prisoners were left to die of hunger as punishment for infractions. In a grim twist of irony, the only known escape from Auschwitz started from this very block. On June 20th, 1942, 4 prisoners, including Pieczowski, managed to escape from Auschwitz in an SS officer's car. The audacious escape had serious repercussions, and the Nazis decided to establish a policy of collective responsibility. If a prisoner escaped, 10 others would pay with their lives. This cruel system amplified the fear and desperation, further ensuring compliance and submission among the prisoners. Prisoners lived with the knowledge that any semblance of individuality or defiance was a direct route to severe punishment, or worse, death. The Nazis' brutal enforcement tactics stripped them of their dignity, reducing them to numbers and labor units. Yet their very existence, their resilience against the crushing machine of the Nazi regime, became a silent form of resistance, an affirmation of their humanity in the face of relentless dehumanization. Auschwitz survivor and famed psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Amidst the unimaginable horrors of Auschwitz, its prisoners exercised this final freedom. their attitude and spirit defying the punishing iron fist of the oppressors. Invisible defiance, the silent resilience of Auschwitz's women. An often overlooked chapter of the haunting tale of Auschwitz is the story of its women. Amid the shadows of history, their resilience, grit, and unwavering spirit offer rare glimmers of hope. The unspeakable suffering of Auschwitz began in 1940, but it was not until March 1942 that the first group of women arrived. These 999 Slovakian women were among the many who, over the years, were plunged into a cruel world where humanity seemed to have lost its way. Women in Auschwitz, like their male counterparts, were assigned a spectrum of roles, many serving as forced labor in munitions factories and various other places of the Reich economy. They stitched uniforms, and their nimble fingers assembled radios for military aircraft, a testament to their unrelenting spirit despite their captors' efforts to strip them of dignity. Many of these women were assigned to Camp Elder Maria Mandel, a figure feared for her ruthless punishments. And yet, amid such inhumane conditions, they displayed quiet acts of defiance and resistance. They showed the world that while their surroundings might be vile, their spirit remained untouched. Anecdotes of such heroism are scattered throughout the narrative of Auschwitz. One such account is that of Mala Zimmetbaum, a Belgian Jewish interpreter. Her linguistic skills, which could have been a tool for the oppressors, became an instrument of defiance. Mala used her position to assist her fellow prisoners, providing them with additional food and medicine, and relaying vital information that helped many survive. When Zimmetbaum and her Polish boyfriend, Edek Galinski, plotted a daring escape in June 1944, their plan resonated with an undying desire for freedom. Despite being captured and sentenced to execution, Zimmetbaum, in a courageous act of defiance, she chose to end her own destiny, denying her captors the pleasure of dictating the terms of her existence's end. Then there were women like Gisela Perl, a Romanian Jewish gynecologist who, faced with the brutal experiments of Josef Mengele, made heart-wrenching decisions to save her fellow women prisoners. The immense courage and sacrifice of women like Perl and Zimmetbaum emphasize how, in the darkest corners of Auschwitz, embers of humanity still burned bright. Furthermore, the story of women in Auschwitz is also intertwined with the narrative of motherhood. Pregnancies were a dangerous affair in the camp, yet stories have emerged of childbirths within this hell, illuminating examples of the indomitable will to protect life at all costs. These narratives serve as a stark reminder of the resilience and fortitude of women in the face of systematic dehumanization. Shadows of renown, victims, survivors, and tormentors. In the tapestry of human history, there are periods of light and eras of darkness. The years 1940 to 1945 bore witness to one of the darkest episodes, Auschwitz. This confluence of human experience would touch lives of many, including those who were already making their mark on the world stage. The story of Auschwitz cannot be told without mentioning Anne Frank, whose poignant diary became a timeless chronicle of those horrifying years. Only 15 years old, Anne and her family were captured in Amsterdam in August 1944, sent to Auschwitz and later transferred to Bergen-Belsen. Her father, Otto Frank, was the sole survivor. He discovered Anne's diary after the war and ensured its publication, which has since touched millions of hearts worldwide. In the same historical matrix, another prominent figure emerged, Elie Wiesel. He was 15 when his family was deported from Siget, Transylvania to Auschwitz in May 1944. He lost his mother and younger sister upon arrival, and later his father in Buchenwald, a satellite camp of Auschwitz. Eli survived and later penned Night, a memoir that peeled back the veil on the Holocaust's brutality. His profound words resonate deeply. For the survivor who chooses to testify, it is clear his duty is to bear witness for the dead and for the living. The infamous orchestrators of these atrocities are equally unforgettable. One such person was Rudolf Höss, the longest-serving commandant of Auschwitz. Höss was deeply involved in the implementation of the final solution. Following the war, Höss was captured and brought to trial, where he admitted his guilt. His chilling statement during his trial in Warsaw continues to send shivers down the spine. I commanded Auschwitz until the 1st of December 1943 and estimate that at least 2,500,000 victims were executed and exterminated there by gassing and burning. Then there is Josef Mengele, the angel of death, who used Auschwitz as his perverse laboratory, conducting horrific medical experiments on prisoners. He managed to evade capture post-war and remains a symbol of the chilling inhumanity of the Holocaust. Among these famous names, there were countless other individuals, their stories equally compelling, who experienced Auschwitz. They were artists, intellectuals, and everyday people, each one of them a testament to human resilience and the enduring hope amidst humanity's darkest hour. Echoes of Defiance, the unseen battle within Auschwitz. In the heart of humanity's most devastating tale, nestled between the chapters of despair and doom, exist stories of unwavering spirit and silent rebellion. Within the confines of Auschwitz, a realm of torment, there existed those who dared to resist. One such tale belongs to Witold Pilecki, a Polish resistance fighter who willingly got himself arrested and sent to Auschwitz in September 1940 to gather intelligence. His daring, courage, and audacity personified the spirit of resistance. Through a network of couriers, Pilecki was able to share critical information about the camp with the outside world. His secret reports first alerted the Allies to the horrors unfolding within Auschwitz. Among the numerous stories of rebellion and fortitude, the Sonderkommando uprising of October 1944 has a place of its own. The Sonderkommando, prisoners assigned to the horrific task of disposing of gas chamber victims, orchestrated an uprising as a final act of defiance. They knew the stakes, yet they chose to resist. The uprising, led by individuals such as Rosa Robota, a young woman who smuggled gunpowder from a munitions factory to the Sonderkommando, highlighted the profound determination and courage in the face of impending doom. There's a historical quote that resonates with the essence of these resistance efforts. "Resistance is the secret of joy," by Alice Walker. In the context of Auschwitz, resistance was not only an act of defiance, but also a profound expression of humanity and the desperate desire to reclaim dignity from the jaws of dehumanization. Even the camp's orchestra, composed of prisoner musicians, played its part in the resistance. While the orchestra was forced to provide the soundtrack to the camp's daily horrors, some members engaged in small acts of rebellion. They would sometimes subtly distort the Nazi anthems as an act of silent defiance, a minuscule but significant expression of resistance. Dawn after darkness, the bitter freedom of Auschwitz. In the bitter winter of 1945, as the world stood on the precipice of a new era, a chapter of profound darkness was drawing to an end. On January 27th, Auschwitz, a place that had become a chilling symbol of human malevolence, was on the verge of liberation by the Soviet Red Army. Yet the dawn of freedom bore the weight of an immense human tragedy. The Soviet forces, who had seen the harsh brutality of war, were ill-prepared for the horrifying sight that awaited them. A contingent led by General Ivan Martynushkin encountered the remnants of a desolate world, a testament to humanity's capacity for inflicting suffering on its own kind. Among the survivors, they found Primo Levi, an Italian Jewish chemist. His words encapsulated the horrors of Auschwitz. "We who have been judged, we are not the good. We are the humble, and we are who we are." These words reflected the survivors' struggle, a bitter fight to hold on to their humanity in a place that sought to strip it away. Interestingly, one of the first reactions of the liberated prisoners was to raid the clothing warehouses. Starved not only of food but also dignity, the survivors donned several layers of clothing, an act symbolizing their first step towards reclaiming their identities. This occurrence is a stark reminder of the myriad ways in which the prisoners sought to re-establish their personhood, even in the face of grim circumstances. In a curious twist of history, the liberation of Auschwitz was not met with immediate jubilation. The survivors, too weak to rejoice, were marked by a profound sense of disorientation and an unspoken question: what next? For many, freedom was just the beginning of another journey, a quest for health, for lost families, for a sense of belonging in a world that had failed them. But amidst the bleak landscape, there were instances of hope. As the Soviets marched in, A nurse named Zinaida Pitkina was among them. She dedicated herself to caring for the liberated, particularly the children. One of these children was Miriam Ziegler, who later described Pitkina as a guardian angel. These fleeting moments of compassion illuminated the grim backdrop of Auschwitz's liberation. The liberation also led to a grim realization of the industrial scale of the atrocities. The Allied forces discovered tons of human hair, a shocking testament to the level of dehumanization the Nazis had subjected the prisoners to. It is said that even General Dwight D. Eisenhower, upon visiting the liberated camps, insisted on documenting everything to counter future denials of these atrocities, stating, "Get it all on record now. Get the films. Get the witnesses. Because somewhere down the road of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened." Auschwitz unforgotten. The echoes of the past in today's silence. In the quiet town of Auschwitz, Poland, the remnants of Auschwitz, a testament to human cruelty, sprawl across the landscape. Today, the camp stands not as a place of atrocity, but as a poignant symbol of remembrance and a stern warning against the recurrence of such darkness. Auschwitz, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1979, draws thousands of visitors each year. They walk the paths once trodden by the condemned, standing in silent reflection before the remnants of the gas chambers and the countless shoes, spectacles and suitcases, relics of lives abruptly extinguished. It's a haunting journey into the past, a vivid lesson of history that demands the visitor to confront the unimaginable scale of human suffering. Embodying this spirit of remembering, Ladisław Bartoszewski, a Polish Auschwitz survivor and diplomat, famously said, "The one who does not remember history is bound to live through it again." His words underscore the role of Auschwitz today, a call to remember and learn from our history. The camp serves as a center of education, with tours led by knowledgeable guides who tirelessly recount the stories of those who suffered within these fences. In the chilling silence of Auschwitz, one can almost hear the echoes of those past inhabitants, tales of suffering, courage, and the enduring human spirit. Among the most moving spots within Auschwitz is the Block 11, known as the Death Block. Here, prisoners were subjected to brutal punishments and unethical medical experiments. Despite the morbid history, a curious sight awaits the visitors. A single rose often adorns the infamous Wall of Death in the courtyard, a silent tribute to those who perished. Another striking feature is the Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free sign, a cruel mockery made by the Nazis, which hangs at the entrance. The sign was stolen in 2009, causing international outrage. Later recovered, it stands as a symbol of the cruel deception played on the prisoners who were led through its gates. In the vicinity, the town of Auschwitz carries the weight of this past. There exists a curious anecdote that the town's residents often face a unique question when revealing where they are from. Met with stunned silence, they then have to explain, "I don't live in Auschwitz, but I live in the town where Auschwitz is." This anecdote speaks to the dual identity of Auschwitz, a small Polish town forever overshadowed by Auschwitz, the place of monumental historical significance. Yet, as Auschwitz holds up a mirror to the past, it also looks to the future. Regular ceremonies and commemorations are held to remember the victims. The most notable of these is the annual International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th, marking the day of Auschwitz's liberation. Survivors and their descendants, world leaders, and people from all walks of life gather to honor the victims and survivors. A poignant tradition at these ceremonies is the lighting of memorial candles. As the flame flickers in the winter air, it illuminates the faces of those present, a beacon of hope, symbolizing the promise to remember, to learn, and to ensure such darkness never descends upon humanity again. As we step away from the haunting silence of Auschwitz, let us hold on to the echoes of the past. The once bustling scene of life and death now stands quiet, leaving us to fill the silence with our thoughts, remembrance, and commitment to the lessons learned. Here, within the remnants of these fences, life stories were tragically penned by an oppressive regime. The narratives of those who walked these grounds before us are reminders of humanity's potential for both cruelty and resilience. Let us reflect on the words of Elie Wiesel, a survivor of Auschwitz and a beacon of memory for this dark chapter in our history. He once solemnly declared, "To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time." These powerful words resonate as we bid farewell to Auschwitz, a place that once echoed with cries of despair but now calls for understanding, empathy, and eternal remembrance. As the curtain falls on our journey through the hushed, chilling corridors of Auschwitz, we leave armed not with closure, but with the heavy responsibility of bearing witness. We carry with us the echoes of those silenced voices, ensuring they continue to reverberate through time, whispering a cautionary tale to the future generations. In the shared memory of humanity's triumphs and failures, let Auschwitz always serve as a stark testament to our collective past, a stern warning for the present, and an enduring lesson for the future.